I'll never forget the day I realized I was in love with the man who destroyed my life. It started 3 years ago in Boston, when Marcus Ashford walked into my family's pharmaceutical company and smiled at me across the boardroom table. He had these impossible green eyes and a confidence that filled the entire room. My father introduced him as our new partner, the brilliant young CEO who would help us expand into international markets. I shook his hand, and something electric passed between us. I told myself it was just attraction. I was so naive. Within 6 months, everything fell apart. Documents went missing. Clinical trial data was leaked to our competitors. The FDA launched an investigation into falsified results. Results I knew were legitimate because I had supervised every single test myself. Our stock plummeted. Investors fled. My father had a stroke from the stress and never fully recovered. By the time I pieced together what happened, Marcus was gone, vanished with our most valuable patents and $50 million from our accounts. The company my grandfather built was bankrupt, and my family's reputation was destroyed. I spent the next 2 years hunting him. Not through lawyers or investigators. Those routes led nowhere. No, I learned to track him myself. I taught myself everything about corporate espionage, money laundering, identity fraud. I became obsessed. My mother begged me to let it go, to move on. My little sister stopped talking to me because I missed her wedding, too busy following a lead in Prague. But I couldn't stop. Marcus Ashford had taken everything, and I needed him to pay. Then, 8 months ago, I found him in Buenos Aires. Not the polished businessman I remembered, but someone different. He was living in a small apartment in San Telmo, teaching English to children in an underprivileged neighborhood. I watched him for weeks, waiting for the right moment to confront him, to destroy him the way he destroyed me. But something was wrong. This didn't fit. The man I saw spent his mornings at a community center, his afternoons tutoring kids who couldn't afford proper schools. He lived simply, almost poorly. Where was the money? Where was the luxury I imagined he'd be drowning in? I finally confronted him outside a small cafe on a rainy evening. He looked up at me, and those green eyes held no surprise, only something that looked like relief. "Olivia," he said quietly, like he'd been expecting me, like he'd been waiting for me to find him. He didn't run. He didn't make excuses. He just asked me to sit down and listen to his story. Every instinct screamed at me to refuse, to call the police, to make him suffer. But there was something in his voice, a weariness, a pain that mirrored my own. Against my better judgment, I sat. What he told me that night shattered everything I thought I knew. Marcus wasn't the villain. He was a pawn, just like me. He explained how he'd been recruited by Helix Corporation, a massive pharmaceutical conglomerate that wanted to absorb my family's company. They had compromised him, threatened his younger brother who had gotten involved with dangerous people, debts that would have gotten him killed. They promised to save his brother if Marcus infiltrated our company and facilitated a hostile takeover. He thought he could do it without hurting anyone, that it would just be business. Acquisitions happen all the time. He didn't know they planned to fabricate the FDA violations, to completely dismantle us rather than acquire us. He showed me everything that night. Encrypted communications, bank records proving the money went to Helix, not to him. Evidence that the falsified trial data was planted by Helix operatives after he'd already left. Photos of his brother, safe now, living in Sydney with a new identity. Marcus had gotten him out, but the price was becoming Helix's scapegoat. They let him take all the blame, made sure every trail led to him. He'd been living in hiding ever since, not from the law, but from Helix, who wanted him dead to tie up loose ends. I didn't want to believe him. For 3 hours, I challenged every piece of evidence, looking for the lie, the manipulation. But it was all real. The man I'd spent 2 years hating had been as much a victim as my family. Maybe more. because he had to live with what he'd been forced to do. The guilt was eating him alive. I could see it in every line of his face, hear it in every word he spoke. We started meeting after that. I told myself it was just to gather more evidence against Helix, to finally bring down the real enemy. But that was a lie I stopped believing within days. The truth was, I was drawn to him. This broken, guilt-ridden man who tutored children to try to balance some cosmic scale of justice. We would sit in small cafes, walk through the parks of Buenos Aires, and talk for hours. He told me about his childhood in Manchester, about raising his brother after their parents died, about the impossible choices that led him to Helix. I told him about the pressure of being the heir to a pharmaceutical empire, about my father's disappointment that I studied chemistry instead of business, about my sister who married a banker and chose the safe path I could never follow. The walls came down slowly, brick by brick. One night, we were walking along the waterfront when it started pouring rain. We ran to take shelter under a bridge, laughing breathlessly, completely soaked. And then we weren't laughing anymore. We were just staring at each other, and I saw my own confused emotions reflected in his eyes. The attraction had been there from the beginning, even 3 years ago in that boardroom. But now it was tangled up with pain and betrayal, and an understanding that shouldn't exist between enemies. He kissed me first. Or maybe I kissed him. I still don't know. But suddenly we were pressed against the concrete wall, rain hammering around us, and nothing had ever felt so wrong and so right at the same time. I pulled away first, horrified at myself. "I can't," I whispered. "My family, everything you were part of destroying." He nodded, jaw tight, and stepped back. "I know," he said. "I'm sorry. I'm so sorry, Olivia." We didn't see each other for a week after that. But I came back. I always came back. We both knew we were falling into something dangerous, something that made no logical sense. How do you love someone who was instrumental in ruining your life, even if they were a pawn? How do you reconcile desire with betrayal? We tried to stay away from each other. We failed every time. 2 months ago, everything changed again. I woke up to frantic messages from Marcus. Helix had found him. They'd sent people to Buenos Aires. He was running and he wanted me to leave, to go home, to stay safe. Instead, I made a choice that surprised both of us. I ran with him. We fled to Uruguay, then to Paraguay, staying in cheap hostels, constantly moving. It was terrifying and exhilarating. During those weeks on the run, sharing tiny rooms and whispered conversations in the dark, I finally admitted the truth to myself. I loved him, completely, impossibly, against all reason and logic. One night in a small town in Paraguay, lying on a lumpy mattress in a room that cost $15, I told him, "I love you," I said into the darkness. I don't know how it happened or why, but I do. I love you, Marcus. The silence stretched so long I thought he might not respond. Then his hand found mine in the dark. "I fell in love with you 3 years ago," he whispered. "That first day, in the boardroom, before I knew who you were, before everything went wrong. I've been in love with you through everything, hating myself for it, knowing I destroyed any chance we could ever have." We held each other and cried that night, for everything we'd lost, for the impossible situation we'd found ourselves in. But love doesn't fix everything. We still had Helix, hunting us, and my family still didn't know the truth. The company was still destroyed, my father's health still broken. Marcus's sacrifice had saved his brother, but solved nothing else. We were living in limbo, running from shadows, clinging to a love that felt stolen from the wreckage of our lives. Last month, I made a decision. Running was over. It was time to fight back. I contacted some of my old colleagues from my father's company, people I trusted absolutely. I shared everything Marcus had given me about Helix. We started building a case, real evidence of corporate sabotage, fraud, conspiracy. It was dangerous. Helix has unlimited resources and no conscience. But I was done being a victim. Marcus was terrified for me, begged me to stay hidden. But he also understood. This was the only way forward, the only path to any kind of future for us. 3 weeks ago, we leaked the first batch of documents to a journalist at the Wall Street Journal who's been investigating Helix for years. The story exploded. Federal investigators got involved. Helix's stock tanked. Their CEO resigned. It's not over, not even close, but it started. Justice, real justice, might actually be possible. Yesterday, I did something I've been avoiding for months. I went home to Boston. I walked into my family's house, the one we had to downsize to after losing everything, and I told my parents the truth. All of it. About finding Marcus, about Helix, about falling in love with the man they believed destroyed us. My mother cried. My father was silent for a long time, his face unreadable. Then he asked the question I'd been dreading. Do you trust him? I looked at my father, this man who'd built an empire on integrity, who'd raised me to value truth above comfort, and I answered honestly, yes, I trust him with my life. He made terrible choices under impossible circumstances, and he's spent every day since trying to make it right. He helped me uncover the truth about Helix. Without him, we'd never know who really destroyed our company. My father nodded slowly, then said something I didn't expect. Then bring him to meet us properly. If we're going to fight Helix together, we should know our allies. So now Marcus is on a plane to Boston. We're going to face my family together, then face the legal battle ahead. Helix has started fighting back, threatening lawsuits, trying to discredit our evidence. It's going to get worse before it gets better. But for the first time in 3 years, I feel hope. Not just for justice, but for a future I thought was impossible. I still don't know how this story ends. Maybe the love that grew from betrayal and pain can survive in the light of day. Maybe we can actually bring down Helix and restore my family's name. Maybe Marcus and I get a real chance at happiness. Or maybe this all falls apart, and I'm left with nothing but more wreckage. But I'm done hiding. I'm done running. I'm done letting fear and anger make my decisions. I found love in my enemy's heart, and somehow he found redemption in mine. Whatever happens next, we'll face it together.